Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I hope all of you are doing good. Well, we are here with our topic of CNS, which is spasmolytics and anxiolytics. Although you have done the drugs like benzodiazepines and barbiturates, which are used as anxiolytics, but some drugs, apart from being benzodiazepines and barbiturates, they are also classified into anxiolytics. So we'll be discussing those only in this lecture. And the second topic is spasmolytics, drug which are used in the various disorders which involve the muscular spasm. So with that, we move on to today's lecture. What is the purpose of spasmolytic drugs? Number one, the site of action is in the CNS. Number two, they reduce the increased tone of the muscles. And what is the increased tone of the muscle? It could be due to any disorder, neurological or at the muscle end plate disease. We'll be discussing these causes one by one. So what is basically the indication of these drugs? When do you need to give the spasmolytics? Consider one thing, if some person is having headache, so you have to give the person any drug to relieve the headache. Of course, you are not going to give spasmolytics. So there's a proper indication. Like if somebody is playing football and he gets a severe ankle sprain, or somebody is climbing down the stairs with a heel and the person that just trips down, then what happens? There's a spasm of the foot or ankle. So these are the conditions in which these drugs are indicated. It is one of the reasons, like trauma can cause spasm. So indications mean those conditions in which these drugs are to be used. Number one is chronic spasm. It is chronic diseases of the CNS. What are the diseases? Like cerebral palsy, which is a birth disorder, then multiple sclerosis, it's an autoimmune disorder, and stroke. These are associated with abnormally high reflex activity in the neuronal pathway, and that causes painful spasm. So this is not as a result of any trauma of playing football or wearing high heels. It does not cause these conditions. These are by birth or autoimmune disorders, right? So in these cases also, apart from the neurological deficit, the muscle spasm is created. So for these conditions, we give these drugs. Number two, acute spasm. This was about which I was just telling you, muscle sprain, how acute injury or inflammation of the muscle, and the patient will present with a spasm and pain. So your goal is to immediately relieve that patient. ठीक है, अब ऐसे तो नहीं है कि football players होते हैं, like if they get into some type of muscular spasm, or some fast bowlers while bowling in the cricket, right? So they have a shoulder sprain or something like that. So you have to give the patient immediate relief. So this is the acute indications, whereas the chronic are which are for the lifelong. Okay. Goals of the treatment. What is our goal? Number one, reduction of excessive skeletal muscle tone without reduction of strength. Number two, you have to reduce the spasm. How? And it will help in the reduction of pain and improve the mobility of the patient and improve the lifestyle of the patient as well. So this is in our aims or the goals of the treatment while giving these drugs. There are a number of drugs which are used as spasmolytics for chronic spasm, normally which is diazepam, which is your benzodiazepines we discussed in the previous lecture, and baclofen. This is an important drug, baclofen. This also comes in your exam. And I told you when we discussed about benzodiazepines that the benzodiazepines and barbiturates are basically acting on the GABA A receptor, whereas B for baclofen and B for GABA B. Okay, so it acts on the receptor subtype GABA B. Then we have tizanidine, that is also important. Sometime an MCQ is asked on its mechanism of action, and also on baclofen. And the fourth drug is dantrolene. I hope you have heard of this drug when we discussed about the toxicity of neuromuscular blockers. It is the treatment for malignant hyperthermia. Very important drug and very important short question about malignant hyperthermia. Then we have botulinum toxin is also given for the chronic spasm. And if you can recall from the chapter of your ANS, when there was the synthesis of acetylcholine and the cholinergic nerve terminal, then there was the botulinum toxin, which was causing inhibition of the release of acetylcholine. Okay, then we have gabapentin and pregabalin, which are also affecting the GABA levels. Then for acute spasm, we give various drugs, in which one of them is cyclobenzaprine. And let's move on to the major drug groups. These are the site of action, primarily these centrally acting drugs, which are the spasmolytic. These are acting at the level of spinal cord. As you can see, let me switch on the pointer. Okay. This is the baclofen, which is acting at the level of the GABAergic nerve terminal and acting at the GABA B receptor. Okay. This is tizanidine. As you can see that it is acting at the alpha 2 receptor. Okay. This is the dantrolene, which is used for the treatment of malignant hyperthermia, and that is because of the neuromuscular blockers when used with anesthetics like tuberculin and succinylcholine basically causes malignant hyperthermia when given with halothane, which is an anesthetic. Then there is benzodiazepines, which are acting at the GABA A receptor. So this was, I was telling you, GABA B, baclofen, GABA A, benzodiazepines. So baclofen, this can be asked in a short question at times. So mechanism of action. Number one, it's a GABA mimetic agent. It's an agonist at GABA B receptor, presynaptic and postsynaptic both, and causes membrane hyperpolarization. If it acts on the presynaptic receptor, then it causes the release of glutamic acid, which is an excitatory neurotransmitter, and through calcium influx. They decrease these influx as well as the excitatory neurotransmitter levels. Then we have postsynaptic. It facilitates the inhibitory action of GABA. Since GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, so our ultimate goal is to increase its level. And glutamic acid and the calcium, these are both excitatory neurotransmitters. So as you can see, there are the arrows which I have drawn. They are a little bit dull, white in color. So they are decreased. The level of these neurotransmitters and calcium is decreased. Then we have tizanidine. It can be asked in a one-liner question. This is an imidazoline derivative. It is related to clonidine. If you recall from your chapter of cardiovascular system, in which we discussed about centrally acting sympathoplegics, there were two drugs, alpha methyl dopa and clonidine. So in clonidine is a imidazoline derivative. It acts on imidazoline receptors. So tizanidine is also related to clonidine, and they have, that is why they have alpha 2 agonist property. And if you recall from the chapter of autonomic pharmacology, alpha 1 was present in the smooth muscles, okay, and alpha 2 were present at three positions, three P's. Number one, P was for platelet aggregation. Number two, P is for the pancreas for the insulin. And number three, P was presynaptic inhibitory, like it's auto inhibitory. So they reinforces presynaptic inhibition in the spinal cord. It also inhibits the nociception transmission in the spinal dorsal horn. So this is important. Up till now, what we have covered, that there are different types of muscle spasm. They can be acute, they can be chronic. The major type drug is diazepam, which we have already covered, which is a benzodiazepines, which is acting on the GABA A receptor. So the drug for today's lecture is baclofen, acts at the GABA B receptor. Number two is tizanidine, it acts at the alpha 2 receptor, and it's a imidazoline derivative. Adverse effects of these drug is asthenia, which is extreme weakness, and drowsiness, dry mouth, hypotension, and hepatotoxicity. So this is a very important drug from examination point of view, dantrolene. It will be repeatedly asked again and again because it is covered in your autonomic pharmacology under the heading of neuromuscular blocker, then here in the muscle relaxants. Then when you'll be discussing about antipsychotic drugs, then they will be discussed again. So what is dantrolene? Let's have a background about this. Dantrolene is basically acting in the skeletal muscles. It interacts with the ryanodine receptor and reduces the release of activator calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So it's a calcium channel blocker and interacts with ryanodine receptor. And what is basically happening, malignant hypothermia is a condition in which there is extreme increase in the body temperature. That is why it is called hyperthermia. But malignant hyperthermia, temperature is very high and there is muscular rigidity. Okay, and why it is happening? Because of the intake of succinylcholine, which is a neuromuscular blocker, but it does not occur in all the individuals. Remember one thing, student, it occurs only in the susceptible individuals. Who are the likely candidates to get this malignant hyperthermia? Those who have genetic predisposition. It's autosomal dominant disorder which have the abnormality of this ryanodine receptor. So what happens? There is excessive release of calcium which binds to this receptor, and there is extreme rigidity of the muscle. So we give the calcium channel blocker, which is the dantrolene. So note down, students, the malignant hyperthermia. It's a disorder of skeletal muscle occurring in the susceptible individuals, especially when given succinylcholine with inhalational anesthetic like halothane. In our upcoming lectures, we'll be discussing about anesthetics. So in general anesthetics, inhalational route halothane is the main drug, and when halothane is given in combination with a muscle relaxant, which is a succinylcholine, this condition occurs in those individuals who are genetically susceptible. So there is sudden, massive, prolonged release of calcium, leads to muscle rigidity, lactic acidosis, hypercapnia, hyperkalemia, and increased body temperature. So, in those individuals which have mutations in the ryanodine receptor are most likely candidates for that, or the L-type calcium channel, there is mutant alleles for that. Another drug which is used for the spasm is botulinum toxin. It acts on the cholinergic vesicles and prevents the release of acetylcholine at the neuromuscular junction, and hence releases the rigidity by causing flaccid paralysis. This is the diagram which you must have done when you did introduction to ANS and the cholinergic system. As you can see, there was the synthesis of acetylcholine in the cholinergic nerve terminal, and that was released. This release was inhibited by this botulinum toxin, and this release was increased by the black widow spider venom. Okay, this is the botulinum toxin. This is a very important diagram which is also asked in exam, and you must all go through of both the synthesis of acetylcholine and norepinephrine. So as you can see, there is inhibition of choline into the nerve terminal by hemicholinum. This is also asked in MCQ. And the choline then combines with acetyl CoA in the presence of enzyme choline acetyl transferase to form acetylcholine. And this acetylcholine, if you recall, it is within milliseconds destroyed by this enzyme acetylcholine esterase. Okay? Otherwise, acetylcholine is metabolized into choline and acetate, and this choline is again reuptaken into the nerve terminal. Clinical indications of botulinum toxin, as you can see in this bottle, and this is written Botox, and most of the celebrities are nowadays using this Botox injection to reduce the wrinkles as well. So cosmetically it is being used widely. It is indicated for generalized spastic disorders like cerebral palsy, strabismus, chronic migraine headaches, excessive sweating, and short-term treatment of wrinkles associated with aging around the eyes and mouth. So it's the Botox, you must have heard of it. So these are the different As you can see, before and after the changes, there is more wrinkles and there's a less wrinkles. Similarly over here. And these are the various conditions, like number one, this is cerebral palsy, this is the migraine. Okay. Then we have cyclobenzaprine. It acts at the level of brainstem and interfaces the polysynaptic reflexes which control the skeletal muscle tone. But its adverse effect is that it has got marked sedation and anticholinergic actions and may lead to confusion and visual hallucinations as well. Students, please brainstorm a bit and recall a bit what are the anticholinergic adverse effects. If you recall, anticholinergic adverse effects, as we said, blind as a bat. Why? Because a person, there is mydriasis and there is photophobia and cycloplegia, person cannot accommodate, so there is blurring of vision and photophobia. Then we say, okay, hot as a pistol. Why there is person becomes hot and why the body temperature is raised? Because there is loss of sweating. Okay, so it leads to increase in the body temperature. And dry as a bone as well, because there is no sweating and thermoregulatory center is also disrupted. And red as a beet. Beet होता है जो चुकंदर होता है, ठीक है? So it's a vegetable. So why the person becomes red? Especially because of the atropine flush. So these were the mnemonic to remember the anticholinergic adverse effects. In the eyes, there is mydriasis, cycloplegia, photophobia, and blurring of vision. And in the heart, since there are M2 receptors and normally they are inhibitory, when these effects are blocked, then there would be tachycardia. And in the GIT, the effect would be like constipation and retention. Anti-anxiety drugs, which is our second topic, which we have already covered when we discussed about benzodiazepines, that they are used as anxiolytics. But one drug group was left, which I am covering today. What is basically anxiety? Unpleasant state of tension, apprehension, or uneasiness that seems to arise from an unknown source, but it is associated with somatic symptoms like tachycardia, sweating, tremors, palpitation, hyperapnea. Just keep yourself in such a position. If you just imagine that you have to appear in the viva tomorrow with no preparation of, or some very strict external is coming, so you would be in the state of anxiety, stress. So what are the signs, symptoms of anxiety and stress? Of course, you would be sweating, your heart, you can feel your heartbeat. So, and you're hyperventilating as well. So these are the signs, symptoms of anxiety. Okay. So, but where there are various disorders in which there is anxiety. It can be panic disorder, it can be generalized anxiety disorder, it can be phobic disorders, that phobias of buildings, phobias of height. Okay, some people are phobic to the to go through the lifts or elevators. Then stress disorder, then obsessive compulsive disorder, which is called OCD, in which a person is compelled to do one task again and again, like washing hands again and again after every 5 to 10 minutes. So this is obsession. So these are the anxiolytic drugs, basically benzodiazepines, which we have already covered. The prototype drug was diazepam. Then we have azapirones, which are, this is the most important drug which is often asked in your exam, which is buspirone. Then we have sedative antihistaminic like hydroxyzine, beta blockers, propranolol. So we discussed in the non-cardiac uses of beta blockers as well. If you can recall, how did we classify the clinical uses of beta blockers? Cardiac uses and non-cardiac uses. So in non-cardiac uses, one of the use of propranolol was in the phobic states, right? In anxiety. And other uses, non-cardiac uses were like migraine. Okay. Others, SSRIs, TCAs, MAOIs, SNRI, which we'll be covering in the upcoming lectures, and then meprobamate and clonidine. So in today's portion, we'll be just discussing about this main drug, which is buspirone. Buspirone is the selective agonist on 5-HT1A receptor, which is the serotonin 1A receptor. It has agonistic effect. Although it has got a weak D2 blocking action as well, but does not cause any extrapyramidal side effects. Students, remember one thing: whenever any drug is blocking the D2 receptor, it is going to cause Parkinsonian side effects, because when there is deficiency of dopamine, there would be Parkinsonism like condition, but that is reversible, that is drug induced, so it is called extrapyramidal side effect. But this drug, which is buspirone, it's very good. Why? Because although it's blocking D2, but it does not cause the extrapyramidal side effects, which is the Parkinsonian side effects. So its anxiolytic effects are basically because of its action on serotonergic receptor, and its site of action is the dorsal raphe serotonergic neurons. So you have to just remember buspirone acting site of action is on 5-HT1A receptor. It can be asked in SCQ as well as in MCQ. And this is another important question you can be asked. What are the advantages of buspirone over the barbiturates or over the benzodiazepines? So remember one thing. Number one, no sedation, no tolerance, no physical dependence, no abuse liability, less psychomotor impairment, and does not potentiate effect of other CNS drugs. So if a person has anxiety and he has to take any anxiolytic, so imagine karo कि you have to pay for your exam and you take an anxiolytic drug like diazepam, and what would be your effect? Your anxiety would be relieved, but when you come before the examiner, you would be feeling drowsy, and you might go into sleep as well. And once you get addicted to these drugs, then of course there is a tolerance and dependence, and then if you stop these drugs, then there is withdrawal effects, and withdrawal effects are also called abstinence syndrome. So azapirones, which is the buspirone, is free of this adverse effects. So these are the advantages of buspirone, and this is a very important SAQ. But there are of course disadvantages. Number one, slow onset of action. ये नहीं कि अगर आपको एंजाइटी हो रही है और आपने 1 घंटे के अंदर अंदर जो है वो वाइवा देना है, if you take this drug, so it is so much effective that your anxiety would be finished. No, they take a long onset of action, not suitable for acute anxiety. So they are not suitable for acute conditions and requires thrice daily administration. Pharmacokinetics. It is given orally, extensive first pass metabolism excreted through urine and feces, and adverse effects are it causes tachycardia and pupillary constriction, and some adverse effects are like nausea, dizziness, and headache. Okay, students, thank you very much for listening to me. With that, we end today's lecture, and this is very important few points which I have highlighted again and again, which are asked in MCQ and sometimes in SCQ as well. And best of luck for your studies, and happy Eid ul Azha Mubarak in advance. And for your assignment on the WhatsApp group, kindly you have to write down the toxicity of phenobarbital and its treatment. Phenobarbital is a barbiturate. We have discussed it, but for your assignment, I'll be giving you from that previous lecture. Take care and Allah Hafiz.